Alexander Ovechkin continues to close in on Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record, but the Washington Capitals may have hit a little bump in the road right now. Dan Holmi of Locked On Capitals joins us to discuss that and what to expect at the trade deadline in Washington, coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, let's start with the Ovechkin update here. He is closing in on Wayne Gretzky, and he just continues to be extremely productive, more than a point a game, and just keep scoring those goals.
Yeah, we love to see it. Reaching 877 now, just 18 goals away from overtaking Wayne Gretzky. And the thing I like about him are the good goals. I hate that because that's redundant, but good goals, getting them while 5-on-5, that oftentimes some of the things that have been said against him is he's getting these goals, but they're empty netters. Listen, at this point, we'll take him how we can get him. He's under contract for this season, next season. So if he has to get some empty netters to get it done, I'm all about it.
Do you think in any way that this chase is a distraction for this team? Is it an inspiration for this team? How does it affect the other 17 guys on the ice and the goalies?
Well, Ovechkin is good at deflecting. You know, oftentimes he is asked about catching Gretzky all the time. And he said, listen, more important than me catching and passing Gretzky is winning another Stanley Cup while I'm wearing a Capitals jersey. And like I say, he is only going to be here this season and next season. So I think that is a clever way on his part to say, I don't want to talk about it. I want to win another cup while I'm here. But I think all things considered that it is the team likes to rally around him. They like to feed him the puck. And Spencer Carberry, if there's ever an empty net, is make sure that Alex Ovechkin is on the ice. But I don't think it's been too much of a distraction. I think that the Capitals are ultimately happy for him, and they're trying to do whatever it takes to help him score goals. And in turn, if he's scoring goals, good chance the Capitals are winning games.
Yeah, no question about that. As far as winning games, though, seems to be a little bump in the road now. Lost 3 of their last 4, although, you know, that game against Winnipeg over the weekend was very entertaining, went to overtime. What has sort of been the issue with this team over the last 4 games or so?
Well, I mean, like I was talking to you in the pre-interview, the game against Ottawa, if you didn't have any context about the Senators, say they're wearing just blank jerseys, you would say that is one heck of a hockey team until you find out who they are, and then you think to yourself they're nothing. But the Capitals have just struggled against some of these teams that really cycle the puck very well, and also defensive breakdowns, those kind of things, spending too much time in the defensive zone instead of the offensive zones. And just the little things like that, not playing a complete game, not stick-to-stick passing or tape-to-tape passing. So it's the little things. And, you know, it's kind of a cliche to say that you have to play a 60-minute game. But 9 times out of 10 here, the Capitals have been playing a 20-minute game or maybe a 40-minute game that I think if they got back to the basics, what worked for them well to start the season, setting up for those greasy goals in front of the net there. That has been part of the secret sauce for Connor McMichael and that kind of thing. They can get back into the win column. But as far as the Jets are concerned, they are a very good team and one to be reckoned with. Capitals got hellebucked the other night there, and I think that it was kind of the same thing. They got it down by a 2-goal deficit. They rallied, but ultimately lost in OT. So they got 2 loser points, I guess you could say, in the last couple games. But ultimately, we're looking for them to clean it up so we don't have to have these games go back to overtime and get back to what works best in Caps playing those complete games.
Got to ask about Logan Thompson. He has had an outstanding year statistically. What has he meant to this team this season, and how big a part of their success is he?
Huge. The Capitals play very confident in front of Logan Thompson. And it's interesting going into this season. There was a lot of questions that it was going to be a battle between Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson. Well, Logan Thompson has definitely taken the reins and run with it, coming strong off a new contract. And to be clear here, the game against the Jets, I don't think that any netminder could have won that game, but the Capitals have played very confidently in front of him. I guess some of the more long-term questions is what does that mean? In that big picture, does Charlie Lindgren get a new contract? Ultimately, how much money do they want to tie up into netminding? But I'm feeling pretty confident just because I hear the salary cap is going to be going up over the next 3 seasons.
Alexander Ovechkin gets most of the attention nationwide, but give me an idea of some players who aren't making headlines, but are really helping this Capitals team win hockey games.
Well, if you take a look at it, there are 9 players on the Capitals right now in double digits in goal. You take a look at it, Pierre-Luc Dubois is the kind of guy, he is a familiar name, but one of the guys that was criticized in the offseason, the Capitals traded Darcy Kemper for Pierre-Luc Dubois in the snickering and the people going, hey, Dan, how is that going to go for you? I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. It's been going very well. He's put up 12 goals in 30 assists. He has been the secret sauce. He has been the guy stirring the drink primarily on the second line. He has elevated the game of Connor McMichael. He's elevated the game of Tom Wilson. Pierre-Luc Dubois, despite what some people thought, I think he is one hell of a player, well-liked in the locker room, and was just a stroke of genius by former GM Brian McClellan.
The trade deadline is now a little more than a month away. You've got the 10-day break in the middle of that for 4 nations. You mentioned that Alex Ovechkin is here this year and next year. You got to think the Caps are all in. What are they looking for at the trade deadline?
Stability on the third line is the big thing. That has been the bugaboo of this team all season long. We've seen a lot of different players cycle through the third line. We traded for and acquired Lars Eller to add some stability, but he's not the Lars Eller from the 2018 Stanley Cup team. Let's put it that way. So I think that they need to go out and sign some depth players, but I also think that they need to sign just some skilled forwards in general, just given the fact that, it's been Ivan Mirshnyshenko and Jacob Vrana and Sonny Milano, these guys constantly cycling through, that the biggest glaring need for me is the third line. But as far as defense is concerned, you can never have enough depth. We saw what happened to the Capitals a couple seasons ago when John Carlson missed a substantial amount of time playing 25 to 30 minutes last season because of deficiencies. So, but Chikrin and Roy have been huge for this team. But the biggest need, to answer your question, is a skilled forward. We talked about a potential guy on the Islanders that could potentially help out the Capitals. But a player like Brock Nelson or a Yanni Gord, something of that nature, even though I'm against the idea of a rental, the Capitals are in a unique position that I think they could truly do great things if they pick up 2 big pieces. And I hope that Chris Patrick is busy between the 4 nations and the trade deadline.
And what do you think the Capitals would look to give up in exchange for this depth that they're looking to get?
Well, that's where it gets a little bit sticky, or it gets a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, as the Capitals have a lot of depth, primarily a glut of talent, if you will, on the blue line with prospects and down in Hershey in the ECHL. So I would expect they would be going after one of the Capitals' defensemen, as there's a lot of teams looking to shore things up there. But this is something that's a little bit out in the weeds here. There are a lot of teams out there that are looking for stability in net. Pittsburgh Penguins comes to mind. I'm talking to you right now, that potentially I think that Charlie Lindgren could be dealt. And I know that some people could say, oh my God, did Dan just say that? I really think it's possible because they have a great talent down in Hershey with Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson, that I think the Capitals should really widen the lens, get a 30,000-foot view of this team, and get aggressive if they are all, in fact, on wanting to make a playoff push and, dare I say, a Stanley Cup win.
Going to be interesting. I know you'll have it covered every step of the way. Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And of course, the podcast is available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.